Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. We will start in just a moment as people log in. I will, in the meantime, introduce myself. My name is Adina Vogel-Ayalon, and I am J Street's Chief of Staff. And I'm very happy to be moderating this very timely discussion about the situation in the West Bank, and specifically the stability of the Palestinian Authority. So I see the people still logging in, so I will continue to just take some time. I hope that you all see that we have a conference that is coming up in December, and there's a link for you to register to the conference for more content and conversations like the one that we are having today, but in person and also virtual as well. All right. So thank you so much for being here, also to Celine and Ali. As I mentioned, we are going to be having a discussion about the precarious state of the Palestinian Authority at the moment, and of course, the rising tension and friction that we are experiencing in the West Bank. Over the past several months, we have witnessed increasing clashes between Israeli security forces and Palestinian militants in Area A, areas that are under the Palestinian Authority, the PA's security and civil control. And the underlying analysis that we have been hearing is linking these incursions to the declining legitimacy and credibility of the Palestinian Authority and their ability to maintain that vital security coordination that exists between Palestinian and Israeli security forces in the West Bank. Recently, the Biden administration has also urged the Israeli government specifically to take steps to stabilize the Palestinian Authority, because they see its increasingly weak status and the fact that it is losing its control in the occupied territories in the West Bank. As Abbas is nearing 88, and there is growing discontent with him and his leadership and the condition on the ground, political observers and Israeli security officials are really starting to sound the alarm about this the implications of the fragile state of the PA. And the Palestinian leadership, in turn, is looking and stating blame towards Israel for actually the weakening state of the security forces currently. So in order to discuss all of these implications and what's happening on the ground, specifically in the West Bank, and the ripple effects elsewhere, the security outlook, what this means for Palestinian society and politics, I'm delighted to have two experts from the region with us for our J-Stream today. So I will first introduce Celine Touboul, who is the co-executive director of the Economic Cooperation Foundation, which is a leading Israeli think tank and policy planning organization that is really committed to creating the necessary conditions for being able to resume an Israeli-Palestinian peace process and to realize a viable two-state solution. Celine leads the policy efforts at ECF and everything relating to Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as regional policy issues and Gaza-related issues as well. So thank you so much, Celine, for being here. And Dr. Ali Al-Awar, who is a chief researcher at the Forum for Regional Thinking, which is working to bring about change in the way that Israeli public perceives the Middle East and Israel's place within it. Ali lives in the Old City of Jerusalem and holds a PhD in humanities sciences from the Hebrew University. So I thank you, Ali, also for being with us. I will start the webinar today with moderated questions and answer session that I will be moderating, and then I will open it up to our viewers. And please do feel free to put your questions into the Q&A box. And when we get to that part of the conversation, I will be pulling from our Q&A box and posing those questions to our experts. So, Ali, I will start with you and ask you to give us as brief of a summary as possible about how we find ourselves in the situation that we are in today in the West Bank, in which the Palestinian Authority's credibility is really at rock bottom, and the Israeli-Palestinian security coordination seems to be in jeopardy.
Yeah, as we know that the Palestinian Authority was established in 1993 after Oslo Agreement. And we can see that the change of ideology of Palestinians, when they changed their ideology from military operations or military resistance against Israel to change to peace, grassroots resistance. And I think that's the main important for changing the Palestinian ideology to going for the peace, the peaceful, the grassroots resistance. That's a good and important point. So after that, we know that Yasser Arafat is back to Ramallah, and they started to establish the minister, many of ministers, and the Palestinian Authority started with Arafat. After he died, we can see the chairman of PA is Mahmoud Abbas, who is called Abu Mazen. So now, as you said, the Palestinian Authority is credibility at the rock bottom, because there are the policy of Mahmoud Abbas and the Fatah movement take us to this situation in the West Bank. And we cannot forget the rule of Israel and the rule of USA. But I would like to start with the Abu Mazen policy. I will start from 2009 when Abu Mazen rejected Olmert plan for peace. And I think if Abu Mazen signed that's the agreement with Olmert, I think we were now in the best situation, not in this black picture or the black situation that we live in the West Bank. But also Abu Mazen in May 2021 also canceled the elections, and we can see many Palestinians refused and rejected the decision of Abu Mazen to cancel the elections for the Palestinian parliament and Palestinian president. So he said that Jerusalem, because Israel did not allow to the Palestinians who live in Jerusalem to vote in the elections, but I think the truth that he afraid from to lose the elections from Marwan al-Barghouti in the president and from Hamas in the Palestinian parliament. I think that's the main reason for Abu Mazen cancel the election, but that's gives the Palestinian people no trust for Abu Mazen, and Hamas started with battle with Israel in May 2021, and we can see how Hamas try and succeed to connect Gaza Strip, the West, the Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Arabian and 48 in Israel, Haifa, Jaffa, Akka, and the other cities in Palestine. Hamas have many supporters, I think 70% from the Palestinian people after the battle with Hamas, because Hamas said about, oh, Al-Aqsa is in danger, and the policy of Israel every day that's maybe do something in Jerusalem, especially in Al-Aqsa. So Hamas in the battle earn or win many support who support Hamas, and on the other side, Abu Mazen lost his supporters in Fatah. And we have to talk about the policy of Abu Mazen, I think, in the next questions, and we can see the corporation and the PA, and we can see many policy for Abu Mazen appointment to the leaders in PLO or the NPA, and that give Abu Mazen, I think, and credibility in the Palestinian people.
Thank you so much, Ali. So you, I was just actually coming back from the region, just leading a delegation just last week, hearing about exactly these same things, that Mahmoud Abbas, or Abu Mazen, as he is known on the street, has really lost credibility. And one of the main things that is pointed to is the split within his political party, Fatah, that you noted, and specifically the challenge you mentioned of Marwan Barghouti, who is also within the Fatah party and currently imprisoned in Israeli jails and is viewed as a challenger and very popular alternative leader to Mahmoud Abbas. And of course, the situation with the elections last year in 2021, in which they did not hold elections and there have not been elections held.
Sorry, I think 1 minute, I would like to add the important point that the policy of Netanyahu and Trump in 3 years last, that's the policy say that let Abu Mazen and Ramallah and Muqata'a without negotiation, without talking with him, and Trump peace plan, did not recognize for the political rights for the Palestinian. That's give the Palestinian people did not trust for Abu Mazen and called for him to go his home.
Yeah, so of course that is a very important point to emphasize, specifically the fact that and also how you noted Abu Mazen's rejection in Annapolis, and that posture of being a leader that is unable to deliver on the peace process, on something that they have presented as their ideology, as you noted, and then of course the fact that the United States and Israel he's not able to actually deliver on either of those fronts. And so clearly those the actions of the US government as well as the Israeli government has contributed to his loss in credibility. So Celine, shifting gears, of course, understanding that the Palestinian Authority is responsible for the security coordination of Palestinian security forces together with Israel. Can you explain a little bit about the background and the importance of this security coordination relationship, and what the current situation, or why this current situation is so concerning to the Israeli security establishment as well as to the United States?
Yeah, thank you, Adina. Well, the security coordination is serving basically both Israel and the PA's interest, because it maximizes Israel's ability to contain terror activity by benefiting from the active engagement of a Palestinian security force. And it also enhances the PA ability to prevent Hamas to grow in the West Bank and ultimately to take over. And Hamas, as you know, is not only a terrorist organization from the PA point of view, it's also the main competitor with who it competes for political leadership of the Palestinian Authority. So both see value in it and are committed to security coordination. The gap is more in the approach. This is an asymmetric relationship. The PA does not want to be seen and treated as a subcontractor of the IDF. Coordination should not only mean alerting the PA force when the IDF enter Palestinian cities or sending a list of wanted person. So there is sometimes a gap in expectation of what security coordination implies. Israel has been complaining in the context of the current escalation in the northern West Bank that the PA force has not been delivering. which is true to a certain extent. But the IDF continued incursion in the Palestinian cities and the lack of any political progress has also undermined basically the PA force legitimacy and their ability to operate. So this is not a black or white picture, as also Ali has mentioned. Now, regarding the current situation, it is indeed a great source of concern for both Israel security establishment and government. The PA, as you mentioned in your opening remark, Adina, has lost control of the northern West Bank due to a combination of factors, including the lack of legitimacy of President Abbas in this area. The PA forces basically have lost confidence in their ability to control the situation on the ground. And so basically security coordination in this area has been disrupted. And this has led to a sharp increase in IDF activity in the Jenin and Nablus area, which have caused fatalities. And there is also, we should be aware of that, a large quantity of weapons circulating in this area. So we are basically stuck in a very dangerous, vicious circle, whereby the number of IDF incursion has increased as a result of this situation, and each incursion triggers violent clashes that result in fatality. And each funeral is the opportunity for radical groups to rally support. This leads to a worsening of the situation that is gradually expanding to other areas and cities, and to a very chaotic situation that is very worrisome for both Israel and the US.
Thank you, Celine. I want to ask you a follow-up question that touches on a conversation that we were having about how the situation for Israeli security establishment in the West Bank is different than the way that the Israeli security establishment views potential risk assessment from Gaza. Can you talk a little bit about why what you just explained creates an additional challenge or a different type of challenge for the security establishment, and why there might need to be an additional more political approach to addressing the situation in the West Bank?
Yes, well, when there was an escalation in Gaza, West in general, there is an escalation in Gaza. First, there is, in general, one single address with who the IDF can engage with the help of the Egyptian as a mediator, and which is Hamas. And so generally in the past, this wave of violence have ended with a ceasefire. When we look at the situation in the West Bank now, this is not the way we can proceed. It's not that there is one address with who Israel can negotiate how this wave of violence will end, because there is not one single organization being involved. There is a PIJ, there is the Fatah martyr brigades, and there is individual armed individual joining and taking part in these clashes. And so it is a much more complex issue that also results from a multi-layer and situation that reflect a much more profound crisis in regard to the PA lack of legitimacy, to the fact that the local Fatah leader in this area are not supporting of Abbas. It's not that they are supporting of Hamas either. So it makes it much more difficult to handle and to end it.
Thanks, Celine. And I appreciate you elaborating on that. And of course, noting PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Al-Aqsa, Martyrs Brigade, all of these different individual actors and groups. I think this gets us very much into the weeds of what's happening there, but paints a broader picture of the complexity and the sort of responsibility or expectation of responsibility that Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen has in that area, and the different types of challenges that he has to face. So Ali, I would love for you to both touch on that, the challenge that, Abu Mazen faces dealing with all of these different actors. And also, you have written about Abu Mazen, about Mahmoud Abbas, that he has turned into a dictator. So I'm hoping if you can tell us a little bit about how did that happen over time, and how come you describe him in that way?
Yeah, I would like to add maybe one point for the talk of Selena when she talked about that the negotiation between Israel and Hamas. I think also that the negotiation is continued by Qatar mediated and Egyptian mediated. So the negotiation between Israel and Hamas that continue, I think, every day. So I think, but the different between the policy of Israel in West Bank and the Gaza Strip, that the General Ghassan Aliyan, he have now a policy to help the people who live in Gaza, that he allowed for 15,000 workers to work in Israel. So I think that give chance for the Palestinians who live in Gaza to improve their lives when they work in Israel, and back with shekels for their family. And I think the economic situation go to be to be good. I think that's the policy of Israel to help the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip. So I go to your questions. The policy Mahmoud Abbas, and we can see now Fatah movement in three Fatahs. Three Fatahs because the policy of Abu Mazen, first of all, he Muhammad Ahlan fired from Abu Mazen. Now he live in Dubai. The second, Dr. Nasser al-Qudwa also was fired from Fatah by decision Mahmoud Abbas. And before 1 month, we see also Tawfiq al-Tirawi. He is the former of ex-intelligence Palestinian. He fired off Fatah also. And the wife of Marwan al-Barghouti, she also fired off the Revolution Council of Fatah. So we can see now Fatah, three Fatahs, and Hamas going to have more supporter in the West Bank. So that's, I think, the decisions from Abu Mazen that take Fatah and the national movement to lose their supporter, and the Islamic movement by Jihad Islami and Hamas going to make more supporter in the West Bank. And we can see maybe in the next questions, we can see how the Hamas wanted or going to work more and more to capitalize or to control on the West Bank. And I think we can talk about it next question, but this is the policy of Abu Mazen to make Fatah three parts or three Fatahs. I think this is lose the strength of Fatah, lose and weakens the national movement against the Islamic movement. So the final of the policy of Abu Mazen, we can see Hamas maybe control on the West Bank, and this is the challenge for BA and the Israel, not for BA, also the challenge for BA. But I think also now Mahmoud Abbas, without election in Fatah, without parliament Palestinian election, and no one Palestinian, I am as a Palestinian, I did not trust for Abu Mazen. Why he did not going for at least election in Fatah movement? Because we need the leader for Fatah, because the national movement depends on Fatah. And Fatah, it is the center power for the national movement. So when Fatah was weakened, that's the national movement also weakened. So I think the first step the Abu Mazen must do, that the election in Fatah for the Fatah members to elect leader for Fatah to control Fatah from Hebron to Jenin. And we can talk also about the arms choice, because there is not a central decision for the Fatah. We can see Fatah members in Hebron take decision alone, and Fatah members in Jenin takes decision alone. Fatah members in Nablus takes decision alone. So there is no decision or central decision from Abu Mazen. So I think Fatah need to change inside Fatah by election in Fatah, to elect leader from Fatah, not by appointment. We can see that's the last decision from Abu Mazen when he appointment Hussein Sheikh to be maybe the new president for I think the Palestinian street. We have to talk clearly. That the Palestinian street did not like this Abu Mazen or did not support Abu Mazen decision for Hussein Sheikh. I don't know, but according to the Israel media, they said Hussein Sheikh did not have supporters or popular Palestinian in Palestinian street. So Abu Mazen, when he going to appointment leaders, this is a big mistake from Abu Mazen. Abu Mazen must go to election and Fatah movement. This is the first step. The second step, Abu Mazen have to go back for election to the parliament, for election parliament, and for president election. I heard Abu Mazen, I heard him in Muqata. He said that he will not like to be president in next elections. Okay, if you said that, so now you can make elections. Why do you like, this is the main question, why do you like to leave Fatah and to leave the Palestinian people without leader? Without leader after you. The day after Abu Mazen maybe will be dangerous, not only for the Palestinian people, I think also for the Israel government, the Israel people also. Also in the Middle East, for the policy in the Middle East. So I think Abu Mazen must go now, immediately, for elections in Fatah, elections for parliament, election for president. So that's, I think, the main step for to take or to talk Fatah or to bring Fatah or to back Fatah. That's a strong Fatah like in the last day or the last time.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you for giving us also the understanding of the fragmentation that currently exists within the Fatah party. As you mentioned, you know, the national movement, right? The national secular movement that presents an opposition to the Islamist movement that Hamas essentially represents. And of course, the emphasis on democracy, democratic process, and elections, and how important that is for the legitimacy of the PA. I want to go back to a point that you said, you know, specifically what is Israel's role in impacting the legitimacy and credibility of Abu Mazen, and Celine, I want to ask you to talk about, again, what do you think Israel's role is and should be in helping to stabilize the Palestinian Authority? There are reports that Israel is considering different types of proposals to help prop up the PA. And of course, you know, there is what I mentioned in my opening remarks, that the United States is coming to Israel and expecting Israel to take actions that would help to legitimize or stabilize the situation. So if you can just recap in terms of what is Israel's role and what should be Israel's role in stabilizing the situation with the PA.
Well, as I said before, Israel is very much preoccupied by the situation, and the security establishment in Israel fully understand that strengthening the Palestinian Authority is key to enable the PA forces to restore law and orders in the area in which there is a vacuum in terms of law enforcement. And this has been actually one of the set objectives of the current government, and one of the rare issues on which there was a consensus between the three key members of the current coalition. But most of the steps that have been under consideration by the current government are economic ones and do not really address the main challenge that have affected the West Bank and have undermined the PA growing lack of legitimacy, which is very much reflected in Ali's remark. The main problem is that anything considered too political is basically off the table, and this glass ceiling has been set pretty low, as almost everything that will be seen by the settler movement as non-acceptable is viewed as too political. So we cannot talk Area C. There is many issues that that are seen as problematic from this angle by government officials. But while the PA lack of legitimacy is due to the absence of a democratic process, as Ali rightfully so indicated, it is also, to be fair, very much due to the PA's inability to deliver any constructive step that will advance Palestinian national aspiration. It has chosen not to support violence, but has been unable to advance diplomatic initiatives, and is even being reprimanded for seeking recognition by the UN. So it kind of ran out of options in terms of what will be seen by the US, by Israel, as the appropriate way to advance its national claims. And this is part of the dilemma. So in terms of the proposal that Israel has been considering, the government has indeed asked various government agencies to basically identify what step could strengthen the Palestinian Authority, but they work under very narrow kind of angle, and are afraid to challenge the government on anything that could be potentially seen as unacceptable politically, and given the composition of the government and the various parties that have composed this government, it has been a very difficult game to play, and organizations like us have tried to challenge and enlarge the envelope of the menu of steps that should be under consideration.
Thanks, Celine. I think I might come back to you to elaborate more on the types of things that should be under consideration. But I want to go back to a point that Ali, you made in terms of the day after Abu Mazen is incredibly dangerous, right? Not only for Palestine and Israel, but for the region. And the variety of questions that we have already received in the Q&A specifically relate to what will happen. What process could you envision for replacing Abu Mazen with more credible leadership? Who are some of the prospects of people that could replace him, or who do you think could even lead such a diverse coalition of Palestinian factions in a way that advances a peaceful resolution to the conflict? So those are a few questions relating to a post-Abu Mazen succession plan. And I'm hoping you can touch on those for our viewers.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point and very important questions. Why did Abu Mazen, until now, leave the Palestinian people without a leader in the future after the day after Abu Mazen, or after Abu Mazen? So I think, and I hope, Abu Mazen make elections, at least in Fatah movement, to choose or to elect leader from Fatah. We have many leaders. I did not like to call anyone from them, but we have leaders in Fatah movement, and they can make Fatah more strong and back to lead the national movement. So if Abu Mazen did not make election, I think the situation will be more worse. That's I mean. The leaders in Fatah did not maybe agree for one leader because that's according to the culture Palestinian, or to the ideology and the families, or hamule, or something for these points. So I think maybe we go to the blood conflict because everyone like to be the leader. Everyone like to be a new president. And if we talking more clearly, many leaders of Fatah have maybe military supporters. And I think, and I hope Abu Mazen make elections in Fatah, because I did not like to see the black future or the blood conflict in Ramallah or Hebron or Nablus between the parties of Fatah or between the members of Fatah, because I am support Fatah and I am one of the members of Fatah. So I hope Abu Mazen make elections in Fatah, because I think without elect one leader from Fatah, I think we can see the worst future and blood conflict between Fatah leaders.
Thanks, Ali. Celine, I want to ask you to touch on how this current situation is in the West Bank, is spilling over into Gaza, and to go back to a point earlier that both of you made about the role that Hamas is playing here in terms of the destabilization of the situation in the West Bank and with the Palestinian Authority. So can you give us a zoom out as to how the situation in the West Bank is, its ripple effects are affecting the region?
For now, the escalation in the West Bank has not really spilled over into Gaza, because Hamas has been much less involved than the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in the current escalation in the West Bank, which is more fueled by, as I said before, Al-Aqsa Martyr brigades that are Fatah armed, which join hands with the PIJ and manage to gather the support of non-affiliated individuals. Hamas' foothold in the West Bank is basically largely contained by the security coordination and Fatah local leadership, which, even if they are not supportive of Mahmoud Abbas, have not an interest in letting Hamas getting stronger. But ahead of us, there are the Sukkot celebration in October that bring a lot of Jewish worshippers to the Temple Mount Haram el-Sharif, which is often a source of tension, which could be exploited by Hamas, who has been looking for every possible opportunity to take a lead as the organization that protects Palestinian interests in Jerusalem. And so if tension raised during Sukkot, Hamas could be more prominent in exploiting these developments and fueling violence in the West Bank and Gaza. And then you could see, like we've seen in May 21, where there was like clashes sparking in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza, and inside Israel simultaneously. We could see a resumption of these kind of development, and this should not be excluded.
Thanks, Celine. I want to turn to a question from one of our viewers, and we have been talking a lot about the implications of the fragile state of the PA on security cooperation, on friction, and of course the concerns of Palestinians vis-a-vis elections. There's a question here from one of our viewers saying that even if we are able to reform the PA and through a democratic process, will it actually address the concerns that are the root cause of resistance that are existing within Palestinian society? What else could be done to address the individual Palestinian security concerns and their day-to-day lives? Is it enough to go to elections? What else can we expect or should be done in order to address the concerns of the average Palestinian?
Yeah, I think also that the important point or the important concentration for the Palestinian people also, Mahmoud Abbas, if he liked to back legitimacy for him or for BA, he have to stop the corruption now, immediately, financially corruption, and BA, that's the Palestinian talk about this corruption every day. They talk about it in every place, and ministers and the other places, they said about the corruption in Palestine, in the BA leaders or ministers that appoint their brothers or sons and ambassador, or appoint them, and BA officials. I will give one example for this. Before 1 month, and the Palestinian media talk about it, that the two ministers in BA, that everyone would like to change his daughters to be as a director in the other ministry. I think if this action will I think see in England or USA, I think all the government go home. So that no one can see that the corruption in the BA. So two ministers go to change their daughters and to be directors officers, and last day they talk about $2,000 for every minister's more over his salary. On the other side, the employees Palestinian in civil service has 80%, and 80% from their salaries. Every employees who work in civil service take 80% from their salaries, but the ministers take $2,000 more their salary. They take $3,000 and $2,000, $5,000 for every minister. But on the other side, the employees take only 80% from their salaries, and the Palestinian government said every time said, oh, we have crisis and economic situation and the so the Palestinian people called Abu Mazen to stop the corruption, to a new I think to a new future for the Palestinian. And I will back to your question. When we talk about the future for the Palestinian Authority, that's Fatah and Hamas also receive or keep the BA as a project for them. I think also Hamas did not like to call us for BA. No, Hamas also need BA to make regional relations, international relations. But I think also Hamas would like to control on the West Bank, but I think Israel did not give Hamas this chance to control. But Hamas, if Hamas like to be as an important player in the Middle East, I think Hamas has to recognize to Israel state clearly. Hamas must to recognize Israel clearly if Hamas like to be as an important player in the Middle East. But we back to BA. I think the Palestinian people wait many decisions to improve or a new policy from Abu Mazen to back legitimacy for the BA. First of all, stop corruption and the decisions or dictator's decisions from Abu Mazen to stop and to back, I think, to make a decision to back Dr. Nasser al-Qudwa, Tawfiq al-Tarawi, Marwan Barghouti, also the wives of Marwan Barghouti to back to the leaders and make Fatah one Fatah because that's make more strong for national movement against Islamic movement. I mean Hamas and Jihad Islami.
Thank you, Ali. So I want to pose to both of you the same question about what you recommend to happen now at this current moment. And of course, as J Street is a U.S. Political advocacy organization, what are the steps that the U.S. can do to help ensure stability or enhance stability? And also, what can Israel do? And Ali, you've mentioned very clearly with the expectations of the Palestinian Authority. But Celine, I'll turn first to you for some remarks on what Israel and the United States can do.
Well, basically, I think that there is a need for a more comprehensive and ambitious strategy towards the Palestinian Authority. Even if we agree that the time is not ripe for the resumption of the negotiation process tomorrow, and that maybe a comprehensive peace agreement is not in the immediate horizon. A lot can be done to address the current challenge affecting both the security and the political challenge that undermines the Palestinian Authority legitimacy. There is a long list of economic measures that can be implemented. The Area C should not be off limit, meaning that currently the PA cannot build house in Area C. There is a big housing problem. There are demolition threatening any Palestinian living in Area C. There is an inability to advance project implementation and infrastructure in Area C, and this should be addressed. There should be a step that enhance the Palestinian governance ability, both in civilian measures and as well as in security. Security coordination, I think, should be enhanced in a way that will be more symmetric and more about a partnership than about the IDF sending notification to the Palestinian security force. And maybe first and foremost, there is a need to provide a political horizon, which has been missing. Saying that the US supports a two-state solution is nice, but when it is said in a way that contains a lot of reservation in regard to the ability to advance it in the near future, it's, I think, compromise the ability to give credibility to this support, and therefore I think that in all initiatives that are currently advanced, whether it is regionally or by the US, there should be a much more clearer message in regard to the umbrella under which concrete steps are advancing on the ground, and the link between these steps and the ability to advance to state reality should be made clear. And I think this is critical to rally the support on the ground of the Palestinians for these measures, and to make the Palestinian forces more legitimate when they are asked to enforce law and order in Palestinian cities. And this is not only critical for peer empowerment, it is critical for Israel security. And as we said when we start this conversation, the situation now is really concerning, and Israel is kind of hitting a wall on how to address it, and they have not managed so far to contain this violence, but on the other around, it is expanding, and therefore we need to be bolder in what is advanced on the ground.
Thank you so much, Celine. Ali, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I would like to talk maybe in 1 minute, 2 minutes. That if we have to keep the BA or legitimacy for BA, for Abu Mazen also, to maybe to help BA to be more strong. The first point, I think, Israel must back to the table negotiation. Israel must back for negotiation with Abu Mazen that give Abu Mazen more legitimacy between the Palestinian people or in the Palestinian street. That's the first point. That's very important. Israel government must back for the table negotiation or discussion, not to back to the table negotiation, at least to discussion between two, maybe between Israel government and BA. But I think if they back to the table negotiation, that's better for BA and for Abu Mazen. First point. Second point, Israel must stop all the actions to change status quo in Al-Haram al-Sharif. Israel government must stop all the actions from the radical Jewish groups, who enter to Al-Haram al-Sharif every day, and Israel maybe going to change the status quo. I think Israel must stop all the actions that going to change status quo, because the rule of Jordan and the rule of BA in Jerusalem. The third, I think also Israel must stop the military operations in Jenin and Nablus that going every day and caused killing the Palestinian youth, So that's very important. Israel must stop the military operations which cause killing Palestinians. Finally, I think that USA and Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken and Israel must exert pressure on Abu Mazen to conduct election in Fatah, to elect a vice president, to elect a new president for BA. That's the very important point, and I finish my speech by this point. Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, Israel government must exert pressure on Abu Mazen to conduct elections in Fatah movement for a new president after Abu Mazen. Thank you so much for you.
Thank you so much, Ali. And I definitely think we understood and appreciate that point of the necessity of democratic process and how much that has impacted, of course, the well-being of Palestinians, the stability of the PA, and how that in turn has ripple effects in terms of stability within the West Bank, et cetera. We see a lot of this does stem from the lack of democratic process. Of course, not only, but it is a very, very important point. And Celine, I also very much appreciated your framing of what needs to be done to create a political horizon, and the actions also, or that it's not just about words, it's also about actions, right? And political horizon is not just reaffirming a commitment to the two-state solution, but it is actually doing things to be able to advance a two-state solution and maintain the viability of a two-state solution. I think that was clear in both of your comments. And just to clarify, in case our viewers know, the status quo of Haram al-Sharif is also the Temple Mount, the situation specifically on the Temple Mount. There were a lot of other questions that I unfortunately am not able to, we weren't able to pose all of the questions from all of our viewers. But I hope that this gives our viewers a taste of what they can expect if they register and come to the J Street Conference, which is December 3rd through 6th here in Washington, D.C. And it will be a fantastic opportunity to delve into more of these issues, both in terms of the situation in Israel and Palestine, and of course also the political situation in the United States, and the theme really being focused on democracy and living our values and up to our democratic values. And I think that theme was very much present within this conversation today, and the impact specifically on Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority. So thank you so much, Celine and Ali, for your insightful comments. And we hope to see you there also at the conference, and we will be in touch. And thank you to all our viewers for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Adina.
Thank you,
J Street.
Celine. Thank you, Adina. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.